You know how we're always digging into these clean energy solutions? Trying to find the ones that could really shake things up.
Right.
Well, this time, we found something pretty wild.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So imagine tackling something like steel manufacturing.
One of the heavy hitters.
Exactly. Essential industry, but man, the carbon emissions.
Yeah, a tough nut to crack.
But that's where this gets interesting. We were going through all this research on clean energy tech, and we stumbled across something called Small Modular Reactors. SMRs for short.
SMRs, okay. I've heard the buzz, but to be honest, I haven't really dug in.
And get this, they could be a game changer, particularly when it comes to hydrogen production.
Now that's really interesting. Hydrogen is kind of the holy grail for decarbonizing those hard-to-abate sectors.
You got it. And what's so cool is that hydrogen itself is incredibly versatile.
Yeah, it's like the Swiss Army knife of clean energy. We can use it for electricity, transportation, even those heavy industrial processes that are so tough to decarbonize.
So we've got hydrogen massive potential, but it all hinges on producing it cleanly, right?
Absolutely. That's the catch. And that's where these SMRs could really shake things up.
Okay, so walk me through it. What exactly is an SMR?
Think of it like it's a nuclear reactor, but smaller, more flexible.
Okay, so like a scaled down version.
Exactly. And because they're manufactured in a factory and shipped as modules, they have the potential to be much more cost-effective to deploy than those massive traditional nuclear plants.
Interesting. So we're talking about a potential cost breakthrough here.
We are. We're talking about possibly producing hydrogen at a cost that could compete with or even beat the dirtiest methods we're using now.
Now that's what I'm talking about. But how do we actually get clean hydrogen from these SMRs?
So the magic happens through a process called high temperature electrolysis, or HTE.
HTE. All right, break that down for me.
Basically, imagine splitting water molecules, H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity.
Okay, I'm following so far.
And the SMR provides both the heat and electricity to make that splitting process happen, and it does it at seriously high temperatures. We're talking around 800 degrees Celsius, sometimes even higher.
Wow, that's hot. Why are those high temperatures so important?
Because it makes the whole process significantly more efficient than your typical electrolysis.
So we get more hydrogen with less energy input.
Exactly. And here's the other big win. SMRs offer a steady and reliable power source. So we're talking about constant hydrogen production.
Unlike some renewable sources, that can be a bit finicky, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're dependent on things like, well, the sun shining or the wind blowing.
Which isn't always a guarantee, unfortunately.
Right.
Okay, so this is sounding pretty promising. But I have a feeling there are some downsides, too. I mean, nothing's perfect. What are we talking about when we look at the challenges of using SMRs for this kind of hydrogen production? This all sounds incredibly promising, but I know there must be some downsides, too. What are the challenges of using SMRs for hydrogen production?
Yeah, you're right. There are always challenges with new technology like this. I think one of the biggest ones is still going to be waste management.
Right, because it's still nuclear, right?
Exactly. Even though these SMRs, they produce less nuclear waste compared to those big traditional reactors, it's still something we've got to figure out how to handle really, really carefully.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So less waste, but still a challenge. What about the cost? Because building all these new SMRs, changing how we produce hydrogen, that can't be cheap.
Yeah, that's the other elephant in the room, isn't it? It's definitely a significant investment. I mean, imagine the cost of building a brand new airport from scratch. It's a big undertaking.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, scaling up SMR hydrogen production to really meet those global energy demands. We're talking about investments on a similar scale.
Wow. Okay, so big upfront cost, but potentially huge long-term benefits if this helps us, really transition away from fossil fuels. Are there any other challenges we should be thinking about?
There's one more that comes to mind, and it's a tricky one. Public perception.
Yeah. People are still pretty wary of anything nuclear.
Exactly, and understandably so. Those accidents like Chernobyl and Fukushima, even though they're incredibly rare, they've definitely made people nervous about nuclear power, even when we're talking about these smaller, much safer reactors.
That's a hurdle for sure. So how does SMR-produced hydrogen stack up against other ways to make clean hydrogen?
Good question. Right now, the most common method is something called steam methane reforming.
Okay.
But as we talked about earlier, it's really reliant on natural gas.
Which kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, natural gas is a fossil fuel, so you're still stuck with those emissions.
Right.
Then you've got electrolysis, powered by renewables like solar and wind.
Which sounds amazing on paper. Why aren't we doing that already?
Well, it is clean. I mean, really clean.
Hmm.
But the problem is that solar and wind energy, it can be inconsistent.
Ah, I see.
The sun isn't always shining, and the wind, it doesn't always blow. So it's tough to get that steady hydrogen output, especially for things like heavy industry, where you really need that 24/7 power.
So that's where SMRs could really shine, provide that baseload power.
Exactly. That's why everyone's getting so excited about SMRs. They could be that missing link, you know? They bridge the gap between those other methods, offering a low-carbon solution that's also consistent and reliable. It's almost like having your cake and eating it too.
I like that analogy. Okay, so where do things stand right now? Are we going to start seeing these SMR-powered hydrogen plants popping up everywhere?
Well, not quite everywhere yet. It's still early days, but things are definitely gaining momentum.
Oh, yeah.
Several countries are already running pilot projects, and some have even announced plans for commercial-scale plants. We're talking in the next few years, which is really exciting.
So we're on the cusp of something big, but it's not a done deal just yet.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. There's definitely still work to be done. We need more research and development, to refine these reactors, make them even safer, even more efficient.
Right.
Plus, we've got to address those public concerns we talked about and build the infrastructure to support a hydrogen economy. It's a big task.
Right. It sounds like a massive undertaking, but the potential benefits for clean energy, I mean, they're huge.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this, turning point where
Yeah.
there's so much potential, right? But also, like you said, still a lot of work ahead of us,
That's always the case with energy transitions, though.
right?
It's never easy. It's not like flipping a switch. It takes a lot of collaboration, innovation,
Mhm.
a willingness to, really embrace new solutions.
And maybe even rethink some old ones. This whole conversation about SMRs has definitely made me think differently about nuclear.
I think that's really important, to be open-minded, because we need to explore all the options, even the ones that we might have, dismissed in the past. Absolutely. So for our listeners out there who are now, knee-deep in this world of clean hydrogen and these intriguing SMRs, what's the one big question you want them to walk away with? The thing they should really be pondering?
That's a good question. I think the big one for me is if we can actually figure this out, if we can crack the code on affordable, scalable, clean hydrogen, how quickly could that change things? How quickly could it reshape entire industries and get us on track to a truly sustainable future? That's the question that keeps me up at night.
Yeah, that's a powerful thought.
Yeah.
Because we've been focusing on things like, heavy industry and transportation. But if clean hydrogen becomes abundant and cheap enough, who knows what other doors it could open?
Exactly. That's the beauty of these big technological leaps. It's not just about solving one problem. It's about creating new possibilities, things we haven't even imagined yet. It's honestly a really exciting time to be following the clean energy space.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us and sharing your expertise. It's been fascinating.
That is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, if this conversation sparked your curiosity, don't let it end here. Keep researching, keep asking questions, keep pushing for those clean energy solutions that are going to shape our future. Until next time.